opportunity to create value. Teamwork isn't enough. Creativity isn't enough. A new product idea isn't enough. True innovation is about delivering value to customers. How do you do that to create a lasting impact? Welcome to the stage innovation evangelist, author, and former president and CEO of SRI International, Dr. Curtis Carlson.
Well, good morning. It's wonderful to be here with so many people, 500 people, who are positively working to change the world for the better. What a great event to be at. And I want to talk to you today about creating value, what we're all about here, and how that can have a big impact on many of the people that we're working with in the country. So, what's the purpose of engineering, math, biology, chemistry, physics, economics, business, art, media, architecture, social sciences, even political science? Ultimately, those graduates are going to be creating value for their customers. So it's not just engineering. Basically, every profession should know that the ultimate goal is to create value for society. But how many professors today even realize that or prepare their students? I went to SRI International in 1998 as the CEO. It was a famous place. It is a famous place in the heart of Silicon Valley. The computer mouse, Windows, hypertext, the first internet transmission were all done at SRI. But it was in serious trouble. It had been in steady decline for 20 years, and it was deeply in debt, selling off its land. And if we lost money one more year, that probably would have been the end of SRI. What was the problem? The problem was outdated value creation practices, poor collaboration, many grudges when you're declining. Of course, people blame the others, not themselves. And certainly there was no trust in senior management when I joined, which was kind of an interesting experience. And we had to turn the place around, and we had to do it fast. So we developed a vision to be the premier independent source of high-value innovations. Our goal wasn't to be good. Our goal was to be the best in the world at what we did. And I think that's the only goal in today's world. If you can't say why you're the best in the world, you're really asking for trouble, I think, over time. So our strategy was to focus on important opportunities, not just interesting ones. And we were going to perform world-leading R&D, better R&D, and commercialization. And the way we were going to do it was by teaching everyone value creation. No students came to us knowing how to be value creators. We hired PhDs from the best schools around the world. None of them knew how to create value. We had to train them all, and we did. We expected everyone to be a champion for their part, whatever they were doing. No excuses. Be a champion. Make it happen. And the third thing was enviable human values. Value creation, innovation, is in a way a voluntary activity. People have to put their hearts and souls in it, and that's only possible if people are treated with respect, have integrity, trust. The human values in this kind of environment matter even more. And the result was we tripled our research budget, grew to 2,500 staff, and we created many innovations that you know about that created tens of billions of dollars of new economic value, from Intuitive Surgical, the leading robotic surgery company, to Siri. It's now on the iPhone. My team's won 2 Emmys, one for high-definition television, and dozens of other innovations in education, the environment, across the entire spectrum, new drugs, innovations that literally positively changed the world. And I wrote a book about it, the journey that we went through to make that happen. And the value creation process we developed is now being used all over the world. I list here some of the countries and many organizations here in the United States. Now, the challenge is, as you know, that we're in the global innovation economy. There are abundant opportunities. This is the best time for innovation in the history of the world. Every area is completely wide open for transformative new innovations. I've never seen a time like this. And as you know, the markets around the world are basically empty. Almost nothing has been done. But you also know it's a fast-moving world, with many technologies moving at rapid exponential rates. There are new business models like Uber. And of course, there's intense competition. And it's just started. China has more honor students than America has students. And they're just getting going. Never mind the rest of the world, Africa and South America. Here's a chart that horrifies me. It shows a real GDP per capita, which has been growing since forever. But underneath that, it shows real median household income, which has basically been flat since the 1970s, really. That is, half the population is not participating in the abundance that we're here to create. And it's not just that we need jobs, we need meaningful jobs. Jobs that people really want to do. So that brings up the question, what is innovation? Well, invention is something novel reduced to practice. As you know, most patents have no value because there's no value proposition associated with them. Only a fraction of them are used. Innovation is the creation and delivery of new customer value for society with a model for sustainability. If there's no model for sustainability, it goes away. It's like those patents that have no value. And most people forget to mention that. It's not only creating new value, you have to have a sustainability model or a business model for it as well. And one of our rules is that all significant innovations are surprising at first. I listen to presentations all the time, and if I'm not at least a little bit surprised, I know that there are probably 24, if not 100 companies doing exactly the same thing around the world. And I am rarely surprised. Rarely surprised. There are 400 drone companies. How many of them are going to last? Almost just a handful. Here are some companies you know really well that are now gone. Nokia went from #1 in the world to out of business in 7 years. Imagine, you have everything, and then 7 years later, you're gone. We do workshops with the top 50 companies in the world. We put them through a workshop, and what we discover at the end of the workshop is that typically less than 20% of what they're working on would have any value, even if they completed it. And we don't decide that. We just give them a framework to decide that. Most of their working on has no value. University tech transfer, almost universally a failure, unless you have a drug. Incubators, almost a universal failure, unless they hit the home run in some particular way. Government R&D, I won't say anything about that, but you know. And even in Silicon Valley, where I am, 70% of the venture capitalists lose money every year, 5% make all the money. And the government's not going to bail us out of this. As you know, government R&D in most of the places is going down, not going up. So we can't depend on them. We have to work smarter. We have to work better. If we're going to compete and have our share of prosperity, the government funding is not going to be our savior. Now, as part of this, we've been asking, is entrepreneurship the right focus? You know, since the 1980s, there are 300 university innovation entrepreneurship programs, 6,000 professors teaching it, 1,600 incubators, and the government is spending billions and billions of dollars every year on innovation and entrepreneurship. But since the early 80s, ventures of scale, that is not moms and pops, they're important, but we're not talking about moms and pops. Ventures that can scale have declined by 30%. Now, I know there are a lot of reasons for this, endless reasons, but this is certainly not what any of us expected when we started doing what we're doing here at this conference. And what I want to suggest is, all of our experience suggests the problem is not at the entrepreneurial end, it's at the value creation end. Until you've created value, you can't be an entrepreneur. And the performance I've just shown you, all of our experience says the failures are right at the beginning. The failures are in value creation because that's the precursor to entrepreneurship. I was part of a National Academy of Engineering study to look at these issues, a 2-year study focused on programs in the National Science Foundation. As you would imagine, we found very mixed performance in poor practices that go back to the 1950s and 60s, not for the global innovation economy. And one of the recommendations among many was that a value creation playbook be developed that would actually instantiate best practices, kind of what are the mental models that facilitate value creation. And so my partner, Len Palazzotto, and I created a playbook which we delivered to NSF, and we'll see what next steps they take. But we did that. And today I want to talk to you about 3 keys to success. If we see these 3 things, we generally know there's going to be pretty good success. And if these 3 things are missing, the chance of success, at least systematic success, is almost 0. The first thing is impact. If you don't work on important problems, you shouldn't expect to have important results. The second is conceptual frameworks. Every field has conceptual frameworks. I want to share with you one, which we found to be really powerful in terms of accelerating value creation. And the third thing is, some people say that innovation is about failing fast, and that's, I really hate that idea. It's, obviously you fail. Value creation is really about learning, searching, and creating fast. It's a learning science. It's not a failing science. It's about learning. And I'll share an idea with you. So the playbook includes things like, what's the definition of customer value? So if we were in a workshop, we'd have you write down the definition. Definition is benefits over costs, customer benefits over costs. The most general definition you can write down. And as you know, they're subjective. They depend on the customer. What we think really ultimately doesn't matter. I mean, our opinion matters because we're working, but ultimately only the customer decides the value of what we do. The second concept is a value proposition. And we believe this is the most important definition in business or university research or whatever you do, a value proposition. And we've defined it to be, what's the important need? What's the need? What's your approach for addressing that need, the offering, and the sustainability or business model? What are the benefits per cost, which you'll now recognize as the value of the idea? And how does that compare to the competition or the alternatives? And what we've discovered is complicated systems do not work. But these basic principles amplify learning. These 4 questions are fundamental. If you take one of them away, you do not have a value proposition. Take one away, you really probably don't know what you're doing. So you always have to answer at least these 4 questions. Here's the most common failure. We call them big A's. Kurt, do you have 3 hours to listen to my idea? It's brilliant. The need is obvious, the benefits are tremendous, the value, and there's no competition. I listen to that every week, over and over again, in incubators, and venture pitches, and companies. They want to talk to you about their idea. They want to build their idea. But a presentation like this really has almost no value. And almost all presentations are like this. As I said, if you can't describe, at least answer these 4 questions, you probably don't yet know what you're doing. Now, I want to share with you
For a number of years now, work has been proceeding in order to bring perfection to the crudely conceived idea of a transmission that would not only supply inverse reactive current for use in unilateral phase detractors, but would also be capable of automatically synchronizing cardinal grammeters. Such an instrument is the turboencabulator. Now, basically, the only new principle involved is that instead of power being generated by the relative motion of conductors and fluxes, it is produced by the modial interaction of magneto-reluctance and capacitive diractance. The original machine had a base plate of prefamulated amulite surmounted by a malleable logarithmic casing in such a way that the 2 spurving bearings were in a direct line with a panametric fam. The latter consisted simply of 6 hydrocoptic Marsal vanes so fitted to the ambifacient lunar wane shaft that side fumbling was effectively prevented. The main winding was of the normal Lotus O-delta type placed in panendermic semi-boloid slots of the stator, every 7th conductor being connected by a non-reversible Tremie pipe to the differential girdle spring on the up end of the Grammys. The turbo-encabulator has now reached a high level of development, and it's being successfully used in the operation of Nofer trunnions. Moreover, whenever a fluorescent score motion is required, it may also be employed in conjunction with a drawn reciprocation dingle arm to reduce sinusoidal repleneration. It's not cheap, but I'm sure the government will buy it.
So what do you think? Have you ever heard a presentation like that? Essentially, all presentations are like that. And what we're here to do is to fix that. To have people actually describe the value they're creating, not just their strange and unusual idea. Now, as you know, a lot of people have been focusing on teaching venture pitches and business model canvas, and these are important ideas, but they come at the end of the value creation process. They don't come in the beginning, and they're incredibly complicated in the beginning. They're actually not helpful in the beginning. They're actually probably destructive in the beginning. That's not where we start. We start, again, with the basics, the fundamentals. If you can't answer those 4 questions, it doesn't make sense to fill out a business model canvas. And it's hard to answer those 4 questions. It can take you hundreds of iterations to do that. One of the things we do is we teach our people how to identify important opportunities. So you can think about, this is a chart that Len Palazzotto, my partner, made up, to get people to think about customers, capabilities, and competition and where they want to be. You know, do you want to be in 1, 2, 3, or the space above? And most people say they want to be in 3. They want to be where the competition is. You don't want to be where the competition is. You want to be in the white space, and you want to have a beachhead where you can get started. You'll have competition very quickly, but at least you want to have a definable, surprising advantage when you get going. Most people don't do that. The other thing we teach our folks is there are only a few things that really matter when you're trying to figure out in the marketplace whether there's an opportunity, and there are really only a few key things in your solution. And if you can figure out those few things and address them, the probability of success is really high. I see presentations all the time where people come and say, oh, there are 10 or 15 or 20 things we have to do. Wrong. That's wrong. That's not how you create new innovations. Let me give you an example. Here's a young girl who has multiple sclerosis, and she has crutches to walk around with. Now, if that were with your daughter, I doubt you'd be happy with that solution. And if you have an 85-year-old grandmother who's having mobility problems, you wouldn't be happy with that either. So in Japan, they've been working on robots for a long time, and they said, well, let's put a robot on the person. So there's a robot on a person, weighs 20 pounds, it lasts for 2 hours. Would you put that on your little girl? Would you put that on your 85-year-old grandmother? I doubt it. So what's the problem? What's the key insight into the problem? How do you attach a robot to the body? That's the challenge here. So we were creating NABC value propositions for a long time, and finally somebody said, what about a Chinese puzzle? Where you stick your fingers in, if you do it right, it'll grab, and if you do it right, you can get your fingers back out. What if we put a Chinese puzzle on your thigh, one on each thigh, and we had sensors that could tell when your legs were moving, and we'd have it grab at the right points so you could actuate, you could drive the actuators to help you move. Okay. So that turned into a pair of pants. This is a prototype. You put them on like a pair of pants, you can wear them all day, and they last for 10 hours. And they're actually quite amazing if you put them on. So that was spun out to be a company. The Beachhead product is really back pain. So a much simpler version of that, it's kind of a special suit with sensors and actuators to help you get around if you have back pain. So that's an example. Now, the third part of my talk is, well, how do you get the answers you need really fast? And we call what we do value creation forums. You might think initially that they're like any other kind of incubator, but we think they're quite different. Teams meet every 2 to 4 weeks on a recurring basis. So imagine everybody at SRI meeting every 2 to 4 weeks and standing up and presenting 4 to 6 teams. presenting for a couple minutes their value proposition. And the presenters have to listen after their presentation. There's no arguing back. If you're arguing back, you're not listening. Your presentation is probably pretty bad, so people have heard enough of it anyway, and you still need to do a lot of work. So feedback like that, individual feedback, only improves pitches typically a very small fraction. Sometimes it actually makes it worse. So that's not an effective way to scale what we're doing. The reason these meetings are different is because everybody in the room has a framework, the NABC framework. So you give your presentation, then someone stands up, and they give an NABC. And because the NABC is short and succinct and fundamental, you compare your presentation to the new one. And then you compare it to the next one, and to the next one. The big idea here is comparative learning, which is one of the most powerful ways people learn. You cannot do comparative learning with the business model canvas. You can do it with the fundamental framework of an NABC value proposition. It's a little bit like imagining an eye test. You could have your glasses determined by the doctor putting on individual pairs of glasses. It would work, but it'd be slow. That's not how they do it. They say, is it A or is it B? Is it A or is it B? Is it value proposition A, B, C, D? Some people do a great job on the competition, some people do a great job on the need, and bit by bit people learn what an effective value proposition, an effective innovation looks like. And over time we add all those other pieces, and eventually you end up with either a proposal, an R&D proposal, a new venture, or a business case. Siri was developed this way. We did years of basic research on artificial intelligence. We were creating NABC value propositions the whole time. We eventually decided we could do Siri, both in terms of the offering and the business model. Only then did we go out and hire entrepreneurs to do this. There are basically 2,500 people at SRI, but there are no, or very rarely, maybe once every 5 years, an entrepreneur. Super smart people, very creative, but not really entrepreneurs, value creators. We incubated that for another year. We took the risk out of it. We formed the company. 3 months later, Steve Jobs called us up. He personally came over, and he bought the company from us, and he put it on the iPhone. And the point I want to make is that throughout this entire process, the framework, the core framework, was this basic formulation of NABC value propositions, which everybody can understand, everybody can remember, and if you can't answer these 4 questions, you really haven't figured out what you're doing yet. At WPI, we're now working to bring these ideas into the classroom. Obviously, like many here, WPI is a team-based, a project-based curriculum. The teams are essential because learning how to be a value creator is experiential. If you're not actually doing it, you can't learn it. You got to do it and do it and do it and do it. Otherwise, it makes no sense to you. But what we've done is we've created a version of the playbook, and out of that, Glenn Palizzotto and Glenn Gaudet. Glenn is now the executive in charge of the WPI Value Creation Initiative that we're really excited about, and we're going to be driving it throughout the university. So we add the team projects with the fundamentals of value creation, and I believe what we're doing is we're creating lifelong value creators, the most valuable people in the world today. We did a little workshop with the team, and I asked them what they had learned from the experience, and one of the students said, before we describe the projects we are doing, now we describe the value that we're creating. Bingo. Bingo. The transformation from projects to value creation is a profound shift that can have a huge impact on America and the world. So in summary, we're not going to thrive just on hard work and talent. We have to get smarter. We need to teach value creation along with team projects. You need both of them to learn how to be a value creator. Where these ideas have been used, like at SRI, there's been a 2 to 10 times improvement in the effectiveness of the outcome. And as I said, I believe, and I'm sure everybody in this room also believes, that these are essential lifelong skills in the global innovation economy. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you.